Hello and welcome to the Daily Space for today, October 6th already somehow, Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. My name is Dr. Pamela Gay and I am here to put science in your brain. Today's first news story comes to us from the Planetary Science Institute. This is our host institute, but we had nothing to do with this research. Our top news story talks about how a team led by Matt Chnowski has found ancient dunes on the surface of Mars. Now, this is something that can't happen on our own planet Earth. The dunes that we have here on our planet are constantly being eroded, constantly being moved, constantly being changed by our own wind, rain, and other, eroding factors. But while they do have massive windstorms on Mars, the other things aren't necessarily a problem. Rain hasn't fallen in a long time. And if you're in just the right place, dunes can stay preserved for, a billion years at a time. The particular dunes here were found down in Valles Marineris, that vast chasm that is apparent in so many images of Mars, and if you have a big enough telescope, apparent in your own backyard. If you can recall a picture of Mars that has those three great volcanoes and that, crack through the surface, it's thought by many that those volcanoes, in the process of forming, drew so much material out from under the surface of Mars that it led to a rupture in the surface. In the bottom of that vast chasm, that's where these dunes were found. In looking at them, they looked at other features around them, they looked at the compositions, and they were able to piece together that while the atmospheric conditions that formed these dunes are similar to the same atmospheric conditions that are forming dunes today in other parts of the Martian environment, those particular dunes down at the bottom of that ravine, they're 1 billion years old. So for at least 1 billion years, Mars has been dry, windy, and, sandy. Not sure what else to say here, but Mars continues to be a really cool world. In other news, as the James Webb Space Telescope continues to not be launched into outer space, astronomers continue to find ways to do the science we initially thought we were going to do with the James Webb Space Telescope. James Webb was originally slated to launch back around 2010, 2011, and now we're looking at earliest launch end of next year. We'd like to figure things out sooner than that. Now, using the Gemini South 8.1 meter telescope and adaptive optics, astronomers have been able to take images of the Carina Nebula and the great pillars of creation that are at the same resolution that will be possible when and if James Webb finally launches. This particular nebula is a star-forming region that we think may be similar to the kind of place where our own sun formed 5, 6, some odd billion years ago. Now, to make this image possible, they had to correct for motions in our own Earth's atmosphere. This is why you build space telescopes. Our atmosphere, because it has different thermal layers in it, and it has different motions in it, all these different factors can act like lenses and bend and distort light as it passes through the atmosphere. Well, if light is bent one way by the atmosphere, you can bend it another way and correct for that with your mirrors. And so what they do to make telescopes like this work the way they do and achieve these amazing resolutions is they either use a bright nearby star or they create an artificial star in the atmosphere with a laser, do high-speed imaging on that bright source, look for distortions and movements in that bright source, and have the telescope distort and move in the opposite way to keep the light lined up at all times, basically undoing the funhouse mirror that is our atmosphere. Now, while they have been able to take this near infrared image that is the same resolution that will be possible with the JWST. Unfortunately, on the surface of our planet, we can't do everything we wanted to do with JWST. We can see near infrared with optical telescopes like the Gemini and the very large telescopes down in Chile. We can see submillimeter wavelengths, which are significantly larger using the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. And between the two, we can see a lot of the things JWST would like to see, but our atmosphere blocks the middle wavelengths of light. So unfortunately, we can't do all the science we'd like to do with JWST using our ground-based facilities. So we're going to keep fighting to launch that telescope. And we have news that it has passed its latest environmental impact studies. So hopefully it's one step closer to eventually, maybe someday, hopefully. Sarcasm happens after 11 years, people. Hopefully we're getting closer to it being able to launch. All right, in our final breaking news story of the day, this year's physics Nobel Prize has gone to a trio of astronomers. And in fact, one of these awardees, Andrea Getz, is the fourth woman to ever get a Nobel Prize. And one of the things I love about this particular set of awards is, well, I don't know anything about Penrose. Andrea Getz and Reinhard, sorry, I'm going to mispronounce his name unless I look at it, Reinhard Genzel. They're both just really nice human beings. And it's good to see the nice, slow and steady, do amazing work scientists get the top prizes. These two prizes went for their work studying black holes. It was Penrose who back in the 60s was able to figure out how to make sense of the way general relativity basically predicts the formation of singularities if you put enough mass in a small enough area, and he predicted the existence of black holes. He was awarded roughly half the monetary prize associated with the Nobel and is the 50% stakeholder in this year's Nobel Prize. You can have up to 3 people winning a Nobel any given year. The other half of the prize was split in half between Reinhard Genzel and Andrea Getz for their work studying Sag A star, the supermassive black hole in the heart of our own Milky Way galaxy. It was using the newly pioneered when they started technique of high-speed imaging and stacking that allowed this collaboration to piece by piece, year by year, catch the individual motions of the stars around Sag A star and say, yes, there is an object that can only be explained with a supermassive black hole lurking in the heart of our galaxy. This is something that pleases me to no end to see. I've had the opportunity to meet both Andrea Getz and Reinhard Genzel back when I was a graduate student. And these are people who are driven by their curiosity, are driven by developing new instrumentation and techniques to explore our universe. And it's pleasing. There are a few truly nice Nobel laureates out there. John Mathers, who works on the JWST, I don't blame him for it, who got his Nobel Prize for work on the Wilkinson microwave anisotropy probe, is another one of these just truly delightful humans who is also a Nobel Prize winner. So anyways, we had another story that keeps getting bumped. And I'd like to say there's a really cool story on the horizon that when it finally comes out, I'm probably going to have a cool background story for. But if you've been watching our preview information and are confused by that one story that keeps not happening, we're also confused. So bear with us. That story hopefully will eventually break. But until then, we actually have a guest today. We have joining us in just a moment one of the producers of NOVA's Planetary Lab show that is coming up in the future, and one of the folks working with their Twitch channel. Yes, folks, there is now, well, it's GBH Boston, has a Twitch channel. This is one of those things that tells me we're looking at a future where a lot of the major media will be joining us here on Twitch. I have mixed emotions about this future. As a early podcaster, I remember the day we all were like, GBH Boston is podcasting now. And we realized that our media had been picked up and accepted by the mainstream producers as something worth paying attention to. Well, now we're seeing the same thing happening here on Twitch, and I welcome my public radio and public television colleagues to this new platform. So stay right there. I will be right back, and the episode shall continue. Hello and welcome back. Joining me now is Daryl Choa of Nova Labs. Welcome. You guys are doing Twitch now.
Yep. We're really excited to be doing Twitch. Twitch is actually part of a GBH initiative to explore different emerging platforms for engaging audiences.
And this is something that I always grew up. I'm from Boston originally, from Westford, Massachusetts. And I grew up, WGBH was the local station. And I still have a desk we got from your annual auction. And I remember with podcasting, yours was one of the first stations to jump into podcasting. Is this just part of the Boston Tech Hub 128, or what is it that drives your station to be leaders into jumping into these new technologies?
Yeah, well, GBH has always kind of been known as a center for, basically driven by mission to create content that reaches audiences. And so it's always been kind of driven by this core focus of like creating trustworthy content that educates and inspires audience members. And in the past, that meant, doing a lot of broadcast shows that people are familiar with, like, Arthur, which is a classic, Nova, which has been around for 40 years, which I have not been around for 40 years, but I've been around for part of it, and a bunch of other shows like that. And so as we kind of think about the evolving media landscape, we've been kind of thinking about different platforms to be producing content on. So not just taking our original content and slapping it on these new platforms, but how do we actually create content specifically on those platforms for different types of people? So I'm helping out with a group at GBH called the Emerging Platforms team, which is just exploring all these different things. So I've jumped on this project a little bit later. My normal job is I'm actually normally working at Nova as a producer for the Nova Labs team, where I produce games and interactives about science. And the one I'm currently working on is all about the science behind the detection and characterization of exoplanets, which is how I got roped into this other project.
And so we're going to raid from our show over to your new Twitch channel. And there's going to be an Ask Me Anything with some of the folks from your exoplanets activity. How does it feel to be part of breaking news of phosphine in Venus's atmosphere?
Yeah, it's really exciting. So Clara, I think I'm going to pronounce it right, like wrong, is Clara Souza Silva, is actually one of the scientists that we worked on to produce the exoplanet lab. And so she was one of the advisors that we have that is featured in the lab and is teaching students all about exoplanet atmospheres. We started working with her before the quarantine, and it's been really exciting to find out recently that this discovery that of phosphine in Venus' atmosphere was something that she was a part of, that she wasn't allowed to tell us until it came out. So we actually have it in our lab already. But yeah, so she and Moya McTeer, who is another scientist that we worked with, who's an amazing science communicator, astrophysicist, and folklorist,
Yes.
they're going to be working together during this AMA segment to essentially build a world together. So imagine what life might look like on a different planet and how might life evolve there, what kind of evolutionary adaptations, but also what kind of cultural things they might adopt.
And we've worked with Moya here on our CosmoQuest channel, and she's part of our weekly space hangout crew. She's a fabulous human,
Mm-hmm.
and the work Clara's done on phosphine is hands down amazing. Now, to have worked with them predating COVID, predating the publications of any of the papers about phosphine life, did can you say, did you have any heads up that this was coming, or was this just a moment of fabulous, oh, we're going to take advantage of this now?
Yeah, well, it was really funny because so the premise of the game that we're building is in the game, the player is a recently recruited Novanaut, so a
Uh-huh.
Nova branded astronaut, and they're
Yes.
assigned as the lead scientist for this galactic resettlement team. So in this universe, the player is helping to find new homes for these displaced aliens. And one of the issues that we came across was we were like, if we were going to place these aliens on another planet, and that planet needs to be habitable for those aliens, what happens if there's already life existing there? And so we were, asking Clara all these questions as we were building the lab, and she was like, well, if you were to discover this gas, maybe it would indicate life, but maybe it could not. And so it was a lot of like, vague gesturing, and we just took it as like, oh, well, science, you can never actually confirm anything. But then it turned out she was like, yeah, I had to hide that from you guys for months, which is actually great because we actually included phosphine in our lab. So in our lab, one of the games that you play is to figure out what gases are in the spectrum of the atmosphere. And if you identify a biosignature gas like phosphine, per NOVA Space Center law, you cannot send life there because we don't want to be colonizing these planets that already have life.
Right. Now, this is not your channel's first foray, or your, I don't know what adjectives to use anymore for GBH. You're no longer a channel. What do you call yourselves?
I mean, like we're on a lot of different platforms. I mean, so
Right.
as I'm describing the Exoplanet Lab, that's our gaming platform for Nova. When I'm describing, we also have a Twitch stream for GBH. I think all these different productions are trying to figure out new ways to engage with their audiences. And for each production, that means something very different depending on the story that you're trying to tell and what you want audience members to get out of it. But it's a really exciting new space to be in. We're really excited to be joining you guys on Twitch, and being able to actually talk and interact with our audience is a really, interesting part of it. We really want to put the producer role into the roles of the audience so I can do less work on my end.
And teaching through play is something that isn't new to GBH. In fact, with your one of your earlier forays into Twitch, you put together an escape lab that I know some of our audience has previously visited. Were you part of that at all?
Unfortunately, I was not back at GBH at that time. I was in graduate school, taking a break from GBH, but I definitely watched it, and it's a really, really cool, exciting space to be in.
And moving forward, is Nova going to be continuing to be part of our Twitch community, where this is just the start of many things to come? What all do you have planned in the future?
I'm not sure I can tell you that.
Okay, fair, fair.
Not sure I entirely know the answer, but we're definitely looking into it because there's already an audience for us on this platform. And it's just really exciting, again, like I said earlier, to be able to engage with the audience. So we're seeing what we can do. If there's a huge, outpouring of support for this event, which is starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on GBH Media's Twitch channel, we'll definitely reevaluate what we decide to do on Twitch.
So, everyone, we need to go watch this to keep them on this platform. Now, one of the interesting things that we've all been trying to deal with during these strange COVID times is how do we keep producing content when you can't show up with your team if you're lucky enough to have a team?
Mm-hmm.
You're coming at this from the new media side of things where I know I'm sitting here surrounded by monitors as my own producer, lighting, and sound human. Um, does this experience with new media make it easier to deal, or how has it affected your work? I guess I should ask.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely pros and there's definitely cons. The pros are definitely being able to work with people who aren't normally in the Boston area, right? All of a sudden, since we're all doing everything on Zoom and remotely, it means that we can reach out to people who are outside of the state in different parts of the world, in different parts of of the country to be able to participate in these events, which is really, really, I think, the plus side. And that's the part I'm going to hold on to.
Yes.
But the downside is, obviously, I think uh, there's a lot of, when we do productions here, if we do need to do anything in person, we try to be very, very careful about it. We also, if we're doing things remotely, I have gotten very good at interior decorating other people's homes from Zoom. It means a lot of rearranging furniture and lighting, so that can be challenging at times, but
Yeah.
quite interesting. But we've also, I think, across GBH worked on developing a set of guidelines on how do we work with talent across, like, in different places, in terms of like tech specifications, audio, backgrounds, things like that. So those are all things that we've really been working to consider. But I really do think this really opens up the opportunity to have different types of people participate.
And I see this as a really cool evolution from where around 2005 we revolutionized the audio media with podcasts, and it started as a whole bunch of individual independent producers doing all our various shows. And then within a year, by summer of 2006, we began to see This American Life, so many different NPR shows making that transition from public radio to the podcasting space. And this feels like a new version of that, where uh, it's now the public television station that's making the leap to the independent produced platform, Twitch, and joining us here where we have this dialogue with our communities. Um, Now, GBH Boston, it's to me like my childhood, my adulthood when I moved back to Boston, but our audience doesn't have that lifelong experience. Can you tell folks about GBH Boston, who you are, what you do, what all iconic shows may be coming out of your set of buildings?
Sure. So GBH Boston is originally, I think, famous for producing shows like Nova, Frontline, Arthur, Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, which is still a favorite by many.
Yeah.
But typically, again, like as I mentioned earlier, is just we're creating mission-driven content. Again, kind of content that both educates and entertains and inspires.
And you're a not for profit channel. You do
Mm-hmm.
get a variety of different foundation and grant based funding. You've worked with NSF, the Sloan Foundation, myriad others. But you're not beholden to McDonald's advertising dollars.
Nope, we are not.
Um, so Veronica Cure is asking, does GBH Media have a Twitter account that folks can follow? Do you want to go ahead and tell people all the ways that they can connect to you guys through new and social media?
Yeah, I mean, we're on pretty much every social media channel. So GBH as a whole has a Twitter account that you can follow. There's a Facebook page, YouTube channel, and then every single brand also has their own unique channels as well.
Now, I'd like to go back to Nova because Nova is a show that um, it's a lot more complicated than many of the other science shows, or I guess thoughtful is a better word than a lot of the other science shows that are out there. Many of the science shows are serial. They're either half hour or 1 hour shows where you go from talking head to talking head. Um, and it's a series. But with Nova, it's in many ways a bunch of individual films under the Nova
Mm-hmm.
brand umbrella. How do you go from this would be a cool idea to producing a full-fledged episode, and how long does it take to tell these stories?
It takes That's a really good question. It takes a very long time to make the sausage, as we call it. It can take
Yeah.
sometimes up to like 4 to 5 years, depending on the production. But I think you highlighted on a really good point, which is that Nova is really about telling narratives. So it's about telling a story. And so within each Nova episode, there's always this one main central kind of story and question that we're asking. And we're addressing it through all these kind of smaller pieces to paint a larger picture. And so typically it depends on the show. Some ideas take years to come off the whiteboard and actually get funding and be executed. And then some shows like the COVID show that we recently did, are a much quicker turnaround. So it depends per season and per year, but it can take anywhere between with the COVID show, a couple of weeks to a couple of years.
And the couple of years allows um, both a following the scientists in the discovery, which I love watching, but also requires a certain amount of taking a risk on, is this science going to pay off?
Mm-hmm.
There was an episode a number of years ago on a discovery in a cave in South Africa of a new kind of hominid
Right,
where,
Homo naledi.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to try and pronounce it. Um, and that particular discovery, to see the team climbing down through the caves and not knowing what they were going to discover during this particular dig, that takes a certain risk. Um, what is it like as a producer to watch these kinds of things and not know how the story is going to end while you're trying to build that narrative?
Yeah. So just to clarify, when I say I'm a producer, I produce solely for the games and interactives
Sorry,
platform.
yes.
No worries. So I'm not as familiar with the production side, unfortunately. And at that time, when that show was being produced, that was actually the first show that I watched my first week at working at Nova as a production assistant.
Oh, wow.
So that show was a little bit before my time.
Okay. In general, so you're trying to put together games and things while these shows are being put together.
Yeah.
What's it like to not always know what the final punchline's going to be while you're trying to put together this content that will launch with the show?
Yeah, it's always a challenge. So I used to work as a production assistant in the education team, where I was working mostly post-production. So as the shows are getting made, I'm thinking about, how these can be best used in a classroom setting. And so typically some shows are a little bit more straightforward. Some shows can be like that one are like a little bit more tricky, but I think there are two different ways of thinking about it. One way is kind of like pulling out the clips and the segments that align with typical NGS's standards, so things that are actually going to be taught in the classroom. And
And
then
that's
also
the
pulling
next
out,
generation science
yes,
standards.
next generation science standards, which is not used by everyone, but it's something that we use sort of as a guideline to see what teachers might need in the classroom.
Right.
So there's a part of it of pulling out the core content, and then there's another part of it of just pulling out like the core story. So what are the really fun and exciting moments that we can really use to kind of engage students to get really excited about the science?
Um, sorry, I'm looking to see what all is coming in on the chat, and it's being pointed out that your season, the Nova. Sorry, I'm just going to read. Mythtown writes, "It's nice that Nova shows up a season now and then on Amazon Prime Video. So if folks want to go through and find all the ways to watch your episodes as we're all looking for things to stream, how can they stream their episodes? And then where can people go to find all these games you're producing, which I'm guessing aren't just for school kids. You're just pitching them
Yeah.
to school kids."
Yes, you can go onto Nova's website. There are a set amount of shows that are available, as we say, in front of the wall that are available to you to view. And then if you just search for Nova Labs, you'll find Nova's gaming platform.
Excellent. Now, as I said earlier, I grew up thinking of the place where you work as WGBH Boston, my local Channel 2 station. Um, but now you refer to things as GBH. Where did the W go?
And hiding. Yeah, so the recent rebrand, well, it's kind of funny. We always call it GBH in the office. It's just shorter to say.
Yeah.
But as part of the brand refresh, it's part of this basically initiative to show everyone that we're really going beyond broadcasts. So the WGBH, I think the W is a very prominent call sign for broadcast shows. And so we really want to move beyond that, since most of our productions are actually now digital and they're not just on TV anymore. So this is just part of an initiative to really just show the public that we are evolving to meet people at where they're at.
That is awesome. And you have your new Twitch content that's coming out. You have your
Yep.
website. There are various podcasts coming out of GBH.
Mhm.
Where else are you producing content?
I think you pretty much nailed it. There's
I
a
may
lot
be a
of new
fan.
YouTube shows. That's great. Yeah, of the ones I know, because I work at Nova, the only ones I'm really familiar with are through Nova. But Nova recently launched a new podcast called Nova Now, and you can listen to it on, I think, Apple or Spotify. We also have a couple of YouTube series that we've been launching. So Antarctic Extremes is one that came out a couple of months ago that followed two of my coworkers who went to Antarctica and their experience down there. And then there's also a YouTube series right now called Parental Logic, which is all about this, a little bit about the science behind parenting.
And it's getting pointed out in the chat that PBS has an app that allows you to see a lot of the shows.
Yes.
And it's the same as Netflix in how it works. So you can also find it on your smart television. If you have a smart television, I don't, but I have an iPad, so the app is exciting. Um, Now, the games that you work on, tell us more about these games. We have many game players among our audience members.
Yeah, so Nova Labs, we have 7 games that are published right now. They explore a wide variety of topics. The most popular game is the Evolution Lab, which is a phylogenetic puzzle building game. So
Okay, break
teaches
that
people
down.
basically teaches it's a puzzle based game that teaches students how to build phylogenetic trees, which is typically a topic that's pretty difficult to understand, but it is fun for all ages. I have seen 5-year-olds play it at conferences before and totally nail it, and I've also seen adults play it and totally not nail it. So
So
it is
so
definitely for all ages.
phylogenetic is like this is a fungi, this is a
Right,
um
showing the relationship between species.
okay. And so this is where you start to get down to eventually fox and wolves are not both ancestors to dogs. One's
Hmm.
lupus and the other's cane. Okay.
Hmm.
Now,
So
how do you come up with the ideas to gamify these different things?
yeah, so they come from a lot of different places. So David Condon, who is the editorial director of Nova Labs,
Hmm.
he's the one who comes up with all these ideas and looks for funding. It comes from either, you know, Nova thinking of an idea and conceiving it and looking for funding, or it can come from outside groups and researchers that we meet that have already built games that approach us to kind of work with them to slap on the Nova label and rebrand to be more of like a Nova production. So it really depends. The ideas come from a lot of different places, but generally just from going to conferences, talking to scientists, and trying to figure out also what teachers need in their classrooms.
And this is where um, human beings learn really well through gameplay. A lot of people in our audience have learned that rocket science is best learned by playing Kerbal instead
Yep.
of by actually like reading a book. Um, have you thought about branding your stuff and doing that big push to let's get everyone out there playing like with Kerbal, or are you focusing more on the teacher's needs?
A little bit of both. So is your question about like including other content in Novas that we
No,
do?
so like um you've mentioned many times that you're going out and you're trying to figure out what the teachers need.
Mhm.
Um but adults will sink every spare moment they can into playing games like Kerbal. Have you worked to try and find the magic sauce that will get the adults in there? Because let's face it, adults need to learn science too.
We have not, just because our primary focus for the labs, the gaming platform, is really just for middle and high school audience.
Okay.
It's one of those things where, designing for everyone usually means you're designing for no one. So
Right.
we try to narrow down that focus. But again, typically, anyone can still play these games. They're still supposed to be meant to be fun and engaging. And ultimately, Nova's still, again, just about telling stories. So yeah.
Now, with the Ask Me Anything that's going to happen in about 15 minutes, you are focusing in on, you have Clara coming in to talk about phosphine in Venus's atmosphere, and you had to design games associated with uh, atmospheric exploration. What all is the story that you tell through that? You've mentioned you have your GBH control center. Can you give us the 411 on this particular game?
Yeah, so in this game, I think I mentioned this earlier, is just that the player is a recently recruited Novanaut. And so in the game, they're learning about all the techniques that real scientists use to detect and characterize exoplanets, and then they're putting it all together to form a picture of what these exoplanets might look like. So in our game, we have a telescope that works much better than any telescope that works out there just yet. So you can actually detect the spectrums of exoplanet atmospheres. So in our game, there's a little bit of like an extrapolate. It's a little bit of a suspension of disbelief, right? To really just focus on the core basis of the science. So what is it? What are all the pieces of information that you need to paint a picture of what an exoplanet looks like, and how do you put it all together? But ultimately, the goal of this entire lab is to really get kids engaged in the science, to get kids excited about the science, and to see that this is actually not just a singular thing that you learn, but it's a really an interdisciplinary approach.
That that sounds awesome. And what are some other shows that you've produced games for, and can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so this is just I just got back to GBH a couple of months ago. So this is
Right,
actually the
you were
first
doing
thing that I've
graduate
done
school.
since
I'm
I've
so sorry.
yeah, since I've come back. But the other thing that I'm helping to produce, which is happening very, very soon, so I'll need to sign off and go help out, is the Ask Me Anything and the Chat Plays GBH event. So I'm not sure if we covered this earlier, but the Chat Plays GBH event is happening at 2 o'clock today, Eastern Standard Time. The first hour is a Twitch exclusive event. That's the Amazing Space segment with Nova. They'll be featuring the scientists that we mentioned earlier. And then after that, it's going to open up to both YouTube and Facebook. And there's essentially going to be a variety show where every hour is featuring a different national production with different types of like audience engagement and interaction that's going to get progressively more and more engaging as you go along.
And what channel for everyone who wants to go follow should they tune into here on Twitch?
Yeah, so on Twitch, you should be able to tune into GBH Media.
Okay. And we have GBH Media out in our chat, and I just want to give a shout out to whoever is doing all the mad texting. You are awesome. And we have Arctifus is asking, are you hiring?
Are we hiring? I don't know. You can actually check their hiring page and see.
You've really gotten everyone excited about everything that you're doing, and um you do need to go and start prepping your own guests who will be joining you in 12 minutes. So this is where I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to let you go. I'm going to answer science questions for our audience, and we will be rating you and bringing all of our questions, and it's going to be a good
Great.
time. So one more time,
Yeah.
where can people find everything?
You should be able to stream into the event at GBH Media.
That sounds awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much,
Thank you so much.
and good luck today with everything. We
Thank
will
you.
see you in 10.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. So I am still here to answer any and all of your questions about science, and we will be rating their channel in just a few minutes. So, what questions do you still have? And by the way, I want to give a shout out to my mods. I realized that the way I have chat open, I was helpless to delete things. And while I was struggling to figure out how to fix that, you made things go away. Mods are here to keep us safe from the dark corners of the internet. And you guys really did an awesome job today. Also, as a reminder, please be nice to one another on the internet. Please be nice to one another. So I am now here to happily answer any science questions you may have. Thank you for the bits, Scott. It's been a while since we've seen your name. Thank you for being here. So let's get that gorgeous image of the Carina Nebula back up. I'm going to go scrolling for questions in just a minute. Do you have a net? So Limp Rimple asks, do you have a Nova watch list to learn how to play for each game? Oh shoot, I didn't see that while she was on here. You're just gonna have to go to the AMA and find out. You're just gonna have to go find out. I'm gonna scroll up to the science part of the episode and see if there's any questions. Thank you, Ambius, for the bits. I missed that earlier. Thank you. So careful with that camera angle. I'm not quite sure what that was a reference to, and I'm slightly concerned. If you are noticing a different camera angle, I'm in the process of rearranging my office and the camera is in a new place. I don't know if it's going to stay there yet. Let's see. Yes, Larry, fossil dunes. I like the way Ambius puts it, the alleged JWST. Yeah, Mythtown's right. JWST is cursed. It is cursed. Vera Rubin Space Telescope. So Vera Rubin isn't a space telescope. Vera Rubin is the LSST. It's a different female name that the W first got. Let me look that up. Nancy Grace Roman. So W first got renamed the W. Grace Roman Observatory or Telescope. But Vera Rubin is the LSST, which is on the ground. On the ground. So naming a space telescope after someone who is still alive seems we don't name telescopes after people who are still alive because if they blow up, it would be rather bad. Yes. I like Michael's comment. JWST environmental impact. It might damage the Lagrange point. No, they have to do an environmental impact in case something crashes during liftoff. Um, so yeah, um, yeah. Well, also the launch environment shakes, thuds, bumps, vacuum. Yes. In fact, the launch impact of SpaceX requires them to do a great deal of seal counting, if I remember correctly, when they launch in California, because the noise has the potential to impact the seal population. Oh, that's awesome to hear, Kerbal, that you've been following WGBH on Twitch for a while. Okay, do we have any more questions out there? Let me scroll back down to the bottom. Thank you, Astro Helg, for the bits. Thank you. Yeah, it would have been Paranor's birthday today. This is where we have to remember the good people. And always, always tell people who matter to you that they matter sooner rather than later. We are having problems with bots. Thank you, Scott. Again. Okay. So while they continue to prune bots, I'm going to go ahead and start setting things up to raid over to GBH Media. Let's see if they have their channel up. I'm going to be cleaning up my studio today. I'm determined to write that W. Okay, they are already live. The lighting always needs help in here. It always needs help in here. I do need to do something. I need to lower this light. It's way too high right now. Okay, so the camera angle is fine, which is good because I'll post pictures at some point. Anyways, this has been today's Daily Space. It has been a bit chaotic. Thank you for being here for the chaos. Waking up to hear that astronomers had won the Nobel Prize. That was literally the first thing I heard on the radio when I woke up. Yes, I still wake up to the news because apparently 2020 has taught me nothing. So we were super pleased to get to share that with you. And thank you for being here. This has been the Daily Space. Today's episode was largely improvised by me, Dr. Pamela Gay. And today's episode will be produced by Ali Pelfrey. Web content will be put together by Beth Johnson, who I can already hear going, why wasn't there a script? Because breaking news. We are a production of the Planetary Science Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring our solar system and beyond. We are here thanks to the generous donations of people like you. Your bits, your subs, your patronage at patreon.com are what allow us to do everything we do. Now, that said, there is a difference between the amount we bring in each month for bits, subs, and patronage and the amount we actually need to pay all of our bills every year. To make up that difference, we're going to be hosting a 36-hour long hangout-a-thon October 24th and 25th. You are all invited. You can learn more and donate early by visiting CosmoQuest.org. We're going to be working on putting together a schedule and guests this week, and I can tell you now we're going to be building a scale model of the solar system in Minecraft. This was the idea of our mod Paranor and was the last thing he and I were working on before he suddenly passed away last week. We are dedicating this build to him, and somewhere in the build will be the blue box he spent his life looking for. So please be part of all of it, and thank you for being here today.